Hello and welcome, Strategy Battle Gamers, to another GBHL James hobby vlog. Hobby vlog number 33, I think, for me. I've not really been getting them out loads of recent times, but I think I was certainly getting out quite a lot before Christmas. Pretty consistently since we started these. And in my last hobby vlog I was showing you a load of the miniatures that I've been putting together over the holiday season, just really gluing together, and I mentioned that I really wanted to get Beorn and Bear finished up, and as you can see on the screen in front of you, there they are. It took me a long time to put Beorn together, the bear form himself, because as I explained in the last hobby vlog, I had to use green stuff and I'd never used it before. I think when I showed you last time I'd primed him up, but what I hadn't done is started to highlight him. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little look at the bear form first of all. So let's just have a little bit of a zoom in. Now, Beorn Bear, I got a real good top tip from Kev Marshspetzer of Shadow and Flame, our channel sponsor. I got a real good tip from him quite a long time ago, actually. It'd be a couple of years ago now, I think, when he came to Desolation of Stockport, and he actually painted up a Beorn Bear in a single day. Bear and man, actually, but he painted up just over the weekend, painted each one per day, I think it was, and I was amazed that even though he was going for black, of course usually when you highlight up from blacks you tend to use Esheen grey, but the issue here when you've got a bunch of fur, which was something that he pointed out, is that unfortunately if you highlight up with Esheen grey, then the bear actually starts to look grey. So his top tip, and it's something that GBHL Damien has also used on his bear, was to actually mix up when you were highlighting to dry brush Beorn's fur, but to actually use Tau Light Ochre, or Vomit Brown as he said, but it's called Tau Light Ochre now, and mixing that 50-50 with black and dry brushing that on is actually the colour that you can see highlighted on top. Then I did ink that. I have to say I'm very pleased with how this chap has come out. If we give him a little bit of a rotate there so you can have a look. So yeah, and I just went over again with Nuln oil, just to get back into the recesses, and then I just took some of that mix of Tau Light Ochre again and just went over some of the raised areas like the shoulders and the spine and the like, and his face. Now his claws, just with any kind of bone that I've done in the past, I used, what is it that I used? Did I use, so I think I actually might have used Karak Stone first of all, and then highlighted up to a Shabti bone. What's really key when you're doing that kind of effect is when you put the ink on, is that you drag back into the recesses so the ink pulls up around there, and then when you put the highlight on, you drag the highlight towards the tips and the points, and you should be able to see that on there, exactly the same on his teeth and also on his paws as well. Eyes, pretty simple to do with his eyes, just a little white dragging line. I know a lot of people struggle with eyes. What's really a good idea, or one of the things that can be a bit problematic when you're painting eyes, is that the white paint, especially if you go straight from pot, will dry at the end of the brush, so you tend to have to go with the part of the brush which is a bit lower down. It is a good idea to use some form of medium. I found that water makes it harder, but just a tiniest little bit of medium. Make sure that you drag the brush across the white paint which has been mixed slightly with the medium, drag that across, and then as soon as possible put it into the inner corner of the eye and just gently drag across. Don't rush, that's the key thing there. And then for the actual pupils themselves, just a dot. Now with him, because he's an animal, I've gone for Doomball Brown pupils, but obviously usually you might use black. And for his tongue and his gums, just corn red, and then inked over with Agrax Earthshade, and then corn red again, and then a 50-50 of corn red and Mephiston red, just to do the final edge highlight around that mouth there. So if we bring him in, You can see there, looking pretty fierce. That gives you a real good look of how he's getting on. Now of course, whenever you're doing any kind of miniature, you've got to really think about the base, and I've tried a couple of new things with this base. Obviously, with it being Beorn and him being in the woods and it very much being sort of wanderers in the wild, I wanted to make sure that there was even more foliage on the base. Now had started using flowers. I've been using tufts for a while, but I have been using the flowers from Army Painter for some time, but one thing that I haven't used since the very beginning when I was using the Grey Company is some of the almost the moss effect down there. It's just like it's sponge basically. If I just zoom in, it's going a bit quick. Let's see if that focuses on Beorn's base now. Please focus. It's trying and it's failing. Let's come back out. There we go. So what you're actually seeing there is that there's some sort of greeny brown sponge, and that gives a very much like a mossy kind of effect. So I based this completely as I normally would do, which of course I use like a gravelly sand so that I get the little stones in there. I actually used dryad bark as the base colour for this, because I wanted it to seem more woody, that there would be like kind of bark on the floor rather than it being too stony. I do pick out the stones and then I just dry brushed holding a Sharpie brown, but then I went round and I actually did patches, and I've got like a kind of leafy thing which I put in a herb pot. When I first started this out, if you go and look and watch the oldest Rohan bat reps, it's what I based the whole things with back in the day, as it were. And it just makes it look like there's a little bit of leaf fall on the deck around the bear. So I have to say I'm very pleased with how he's turned out. If anybody's got any tips about how I can make him better, then do let me know. One thing which I've discussed on the Facebook page is potentially using the UHU glue and maybe creating a little bit of a drool from tooth to tooth there, which might just really sort of take the quality of him up a notch. Now of course, no point just doing Beorn in bear form, because you have to do the man form as well, and I've literally just 5 minutes ago got this guy pretty much finished. So there he is. Now a couple of things I'd like to point out with Beorn here. I think one thing that I do still want to do before I give him the final tick off, as it were, is I probably just want to do a little bit of, I think it's Reichland Flesh Shade wash, just a little bit of a wash around some parts of his skin. But I'm really pleased with how he came out. Now you'll notice that with the hair I've not really gone as grey as what you see a lot of the Beorns and even the Beorn in the movie. And that's because I actually wanted Beorn to, one, match the bear a little bit. I wanted, you know, that's something that I never really got, that he was a big black bear in the movies, but then of course when he changes into the man form, that he's got this kind of grey, he almost looks werewolfish. Now I do actually kind of like the aesthetic of Beorn, but I think that just doing the same kind of technique with his hair as what I did with the bear skin, so that's 50-50 towel light ochre mixed with the Abaddon black, and dry brushing that over, and then just using a little bit of grey just to highlight some of the hairs around the front of his face, just to show a little bit of aging. I think that's actually worked kind of well indeed. So let's talk through some of the techniques that we've got on him. Now I've gone for some green pants. I mean, this pose in particular is very much the kind of pose you think from the book, and that's another reason for going for the kind of the black hair and beard, because very much in the book that's how he's described. But I have gone for sort of brown boots rather than black kind of leather boots. But I've gone for sort of brown leather boots and a brown sash, again just to try and make him a little bit more earthy, you know, to look at. And I have gone for the green pants. Now the green pants have really come from when I painted my Guild Ball miniatures, and when I did Boar, the big guy, probably the last person that I painted that had as much skin as Beorn here, which I kind of reckoned the techniques for painting him were quite similar, although I have to admit that the boar miniature from Gilball, the metal miniature, is superior to paint than the fine cast Beorn here, although I don't think I've done him too much of an injustice. I'm reasonably pleased with how he's finished off. His boots and his brown kind of belt sash thing, they are just Mournfang brown first of all, then an Agrax Earth shade wash, then of course you go over with your base colour again in the raised areas, and then I just did a little bit of a 50-50 Jacaro orange with the Mournfang brown just as a final little edge highlight on some of the bits there, just where the light is catching. Now I also did Mournfang brown on the axe shaft, and you will have seen this technique I've done on the Riverdale Knight lances if you go back through the hobby vlogs, and also on the axes of the Sons of Ale. This is something again that I've learnt from Shadow and Flame, our channel sponsors. And Shadow taught me how to do this technique. Again, this probably needs a very light Agrax Earthshade wash mixed with lots of water just to finish it off. But what you do is you Mournfang brown the axe shaft, you Agrax Earthshade it just to give it a little bit of a darkish tone, and then you use, it's called Graveyard Earth when Kev tells me about it, but it's actually Steel Legion Drab, and you do very faint little wiggly lines going all the way down the shaft, and that creates kind of like a wood effect. Now you might be able to tell, but with the actual axe head itself, I went for something a little different. There's a couple of little diagonal lines in there. Just let me know what you think. I've never done it before, but when I highlighted up from it's called Leadbelcher, which is the darker silver colour. I use Runefang steel and usually just go across the edges, but it didn't really look to me like the axe was popping at all. So what I did, I wanted to make it look like it was kind of glinting in the light ever so slightly, and I did a couple of diagonal lines. Not sure if that works or not, but some of you guys out there might be able to give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Now to his pants are just Castellan green across. Again, I used Nuln oil to actually shade these because I didn't really want them to have too much of a browny texture. And then again just went over with Castellan, and then a 50-50 Castellan and Lorraine Forest, and then a final little Lorraine Forest highlight over the top. And his skin, I've pretty much done exactly how I've been doing skin generally lately, although you probably be able to see a little bit more, a little bit more with the technique, because there is more skin on Beorn here. So if we just give him a little bit of a twizzle, so you can tell me what you think. So his skin is it's the dwarven flesh colour, goes on first of all, and then I wash the whole thing in Agrax Earthshade, then I go back over with the, I think, is it called Rakar Flesh? Something like that. It's a darker flesh colour. And then I start highlighting up using 50-50 Ungor Flesh, which is a lighter kind of elfish flesh. And then also with the Rakar Flesh. And then finally the Ungor just over the top as well. And then I tend to go over with a little bit of a Reichland flesh shade at the end. Now as you can see on the back, I've actually done a little bit of work on his scars. So what I did with his scars is that I got the, not really focusing great today, maybe it's because it's going in too quickly. Let's see. On his scars I actually just went over them with I think it might be Rakar Flesh. Oh no, sorry, yeah, so Rakar Flesh is the whiter flesh, so the one that I was putting on first was more of the dwarven flesh. I can't remember what it's called, but the Rakar Flesh is like a whitey kind of dead flesh, and I put that over where his scars were, and then I mixed in a very tiny little bit of corn red with it just to create that kind of scar tissue look. So it's almost got like a pinky purple, so that might be something to think about if you want to do something like that in the future. And then of course, as always, you want to finish off your miniature with his face and his eyes in particular, and I have actually painted his eyes in there, which I'm reasonably pleased about. And I've gone for the same base technique. Now I did get a comment, I did do a couple of tweets and Facebook messages today, and when people had seen how these guys were looking, they actually said that they liked the black base rim, which of course is how the models come, but I do all of mine with a Mournfang brown rim, and I have decided to keep it with that, although you guys did make me doubt it for a little bit of a second. So I am really looking forward to getting these guys in Battle Report. very, very soon. I've got one planned with these guys for Hotgates Gaming. I've heard that they are great fun to use. I don't think I've ever used Beorn and Bear, but it's a character that I really, really love, that I really loved from the Hobbit books when I was growing up. That I do like in the Hobbit movies. I was a bit gutted before the extended version that you didn't really see too much of Mr. Beorn, and I've loved the miniatures, and I even love the profile in the game. I know that he's very expensive and you probably don't take him in a competitive army, but I can imagine him being great fun to bring along, and now that these guys are done, I can definitely do that. And what that also does, it allows me to bring the Shadow and Flame Radagast a little bit more often as well, because I haven't really used him for a ton of battle reports in the past. But actually, Beorn here plus Radagast on foot make a nice little 350 point silly little list, which could be quite good fun to use, and hopefully you'll see in a battle report very, very soon. So I hope you've enjoyed this hobby vlog, just talking through some of the different colours that I used and the techniques I used to achieve this. If you do like what I've done here, make sure that you comment below as always, and that you like this video. And if you want to support me making even more content, make sure you go and check out hotgatesgaming.com. Well, Hotgates Gaming on YouTube, sorry, the website hasn't gone live yet, but if you go and check out Hotgates Gaming on YouTube, then you can see some battle reports where I will be using these guys very, very soon. So guys, don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe. Support your Hobbit hosts by checking the links in the video description below, and remember, you can support Tom and Damien by getting behind SBG magazine when that comes out. You can support GBHL Jamie by checking out his Patreon, which is under the GBHL podcast Patreon, but it is Jamie's Patreon. Or you can support me by getting onto my Patreon for Hotgates Gaming. Also, make sure that you like our Facebook page and that you follow us on Twitter. Not a lot of tweeting lately. I have to admit that I personally have been doing a lot more with Hotgates Gaming. Lots of Guild Ball players on there, I have to say. But nonetheless, make sure that you do follow us on Twitter. Support your Hobbit hobby. That's what we all want to do, guys. It's going to be a very, very exciting year, and happy strategy battle gaming.